People don't suddenly change. What shocks you is that one day they finally stop hiding who they've been becoming all along. And sometimes the most painful part isn't watching them change, it's realizing you never saw it coming. Have you ever looked at someone you once knew and thought, what happened to you? Maybe it was a friend who became cold without explanation, a partner who once couldn't live without you but now treats you like a stranger. Or perhaps someone who promised loyalty, only to become someone you barely recognize. At first, it feels like betrayal, like a switch flipped overnight. But human beings are rarely transformed in a single moment. Most changes happen in silence, behind closed doors, inside thoughts they never shared, within wounds they never spoke about. What you witness as a sudden change is often the final chapter of a story you were never allowed to read. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that is exactly what happens to many people. Their hidden fears become decisions, their unhealed pain becomes distance, their buried desires become a new identity. Tonight, we're going beneath the surface to uncover the psychology behind people who suddenly change. Why do they become different? Why do some walk away without warning? Why does love turn into indifference? Loyalty into silence and familiarity into mystery? Because once you understand the psychology of change, you'll stop asking, why did they change? And start asking the question that reveals everything. Who were they becoming when nobody was watching? Chapter 1. The change started. Long before you noticed, the most dangerous transformations are the ones that happen quietly, while everyone believes everything is still the same. One of the greatest illusions in human relationships is the belief that change announces itself. We imagine people changing dramatically, like a storm arriving with thunder and lightning, but psychology reveals something very different. Most people change gradually, internally, and invisibly. Think about a tree during winter. Every day it appears exactly the same. Nothing seems different. Yet beneath the frozen surface, countless biological processes are unfolding. Roots are adapting, cells are shifting, growth is occurring where no one can see it. Human beings are remarkably similar. A friend doesn't wake up one morning and suddenly become distant. A partner doesn't instantly stop loving. A loyal employee doesn't suddenly decide to quit. The visible action is often the result of hundreds of invisible moments accumulating over time. Small disappointments, unspoken frustrations, unfulfilled dreams, private realizations, tiny emotional withdrawals that eventually become a complete departure. The tragedy is that most people only notice change when it becomes impossible to ignore. By then, the process has already been happening for months or even years. This is why people often say, "You changed." But from the other person's perspective, they may feel they have been changing for a very long time. You simply witnessed the ending, not the journey. Carl Jung believed that every individual carries a hidden self, a version of themselves that slowly develops beneath social expectations and daily routines. Eventually, that hidden self demands expression, and when it finally emerges, it can appear shocking to everyone around them. But the truth is simple. Sudden change is often slow change that remained invisible until it reached a breaking point. The question isn't whether people change. The question is whether we're paying attention while they're changing. Because by the time transformation becomes obvious, the person standing before you may have already left emotionally long ago. Chapter 2. Why pain often changes. People more than love. Sometimes the person who changed wasn't transformed by success, wisdom, or happiness. They were transformed by a wound nobody could see. There is a difficult truth about human psychology that many people spend years trying to understand. Love can inspire change, but pain often forces it. Think about your own life for a moment. The biggest transformations you've experienced probably didn't arrive during your happiest days. They arrived after heartbreak, after rejection, after failure, after betrayal, after the moment life became impossible to understand. Pain has a unique ability to dismantle the identity we once believed was permanent. A person who trusted everyone becomes cautious. A person who loved openly becomes guarded. A person who sacrificed everything for others learns to become selfish. And from the outside, people say, "You've changed." But what they're really witnessing is adaptation. The human mind is designed for survival. When something hurts deeply enough, the brain begins rewriting its own rules. It starts asking questions like, how do I make sure this never happens again? How do I protect myself? How do I avoid feeling this pain another time? And often, the answers create a completely different version of the person. Imagine touching a hot stove. You don't need motivation to avoid it again. Pain teaches the lesson instantly. Emotional pain works exactly the same way. A betrayal teaches suspicion. Abandonment teaches independence. Humiliation teaches caution. Loss teaches detachment. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger." But strength is often misunderstood. Strength doesn't always make people softer, wiser, or kinder. Sometimes it makes them harder. Sometimes it builds walls instead of bridges. Sometimes it creates distance where there was once vulnerability. This is why two people can experience the same heartbreak and emerge completely different. One becomes more compassionate, the other becomes emotionally unavailable. One opens their heart further, the other locks the door forever. The pain is similar, the interpretation is different. And interpretation shapes identity. Perhaps the saddest reality is that many people are judged for the person they became after suffering, while very few people take the time to understand the suffering that created them. Behind every sudden change, there is often a story of disappointment, a story of grief, a story of survival, a story nobody else was present to witness. And sometimes the person who changed isn't becoming worse. They're simply becoming someone pain taught them to be. Chapter 3. The hidden identity people keep from the world. The person you know is often only a fraction of the person they truly are. And one day, the hidden side may finally step into the light. One of Carl Jung's most profound ideas was that every human being wears a mask. Not necessarily because they are dishonest, but because society rewards certain behaviors and punishes others. From childhood, people learn which parts of themselves are acceptable. They learn what earns love, what earns approval, what earns belonging. And slowly they begin building a version of themselves that the world wants to see. Jung called this the persona, the social self, the mask, the carefully constructed identity presented to family, friends, co-workers, and even romantic partners. But there is another side, a hidden side. A collection of desires, fears, ambitions, resentments, dreams, and emotions that remain buried beneath the surface. For years, this hidden self may remain silent. A person may spend decades living according to expectations. The dutiful son, the loyal friend, the devoted partner, the reliable employee, the people pleaser, the peacemaker. Yet inside, another voice is growing louder, a voice asking uncomfortable questions. Is this really who I am? Am I living for myself or for everyone else? How much of my life belongs to me? And eventually, that voice becomes impossible to ignore. This is often the moment others describe as a sudden change. The quiet person becomes outspoken. The agreeable person starts saying no. The dependable person walks away. The loyal partner leaves a relationship. The employee quits the stable job. The friend disappears from social circles. Everyone is shocked. Everyone asks what happened. But from the perspective of the person changing, they may feel something entirely different. They may feel relief, because for the first time, they are acting in alignment with a self that has existed for years. Think about a volcano. People often focus on the eruption, the dramatic moment, the explosion everyone can see. Yet the eruption is merely the visible result of pressure that has been building underground for an incredibly long time. Human transformation follows the same pattern. The visible action is not the beginning, it is the release, the culmination, the moment the hidden identity finally refuses to remain hidden. This doesn't mean every change is healthy, nor does it mean every transformation is wise, but it does explain why some changes appear to happen overnight. The truth is that people often spend years becoming someone new in private before revealing that person in public. And when the mask finally falls away, the people around them aren't meeting a stranger. They're meeting the version that was waiting underneath all along, the version that finally decided it could no longer pretend. Chapter 4. The final truth about people who suddenly change. What if the real lesson isn't that people change, but that everything in life is changing all the time, including you? There is a moment in almost every person's life when they stop asking why someone changed and begin asking a much deeper question: why did I expect them to stay the same forever? It is one of the hardest truths to accept. We fall in love with versions of people. We build friendships around versions of people. We create futures based on versions of people. Then life moves forward, experiences accumulate, dreams evolve, pain leaves its marks, wisdom reshapes priorities. And slowly, the person we once knew begins becoming someone else. The philosopher Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." Centuries later, that observation remains painfully relevant, because neither rivers nor human beings stand still. Everything is in motion, everything is changing. And perhaps the greatest suffering comes not from change itself, but from our resistance to it. We want permanence in an impermanent world. We want certainty in a reality built upon transformation. We want people to remain exactly as they were when they made us feel safe. But life rarely grants that wish. Some people change because they are growing. Some change because they are hurting. Some change because they are finally becoming honest. And some change because they are lost. The challenge is learning to recognize the difference. Not every transformation deserves your loyalty. Not every transformation deserves your judgment. Sometimes people become better, sometimes they become worse, and sometimes they simply become different. The real wisdom lies in understanding that their journey belongs to them, just as yours belongs to you. Many viewers watching this right now may be thinking about someone who changed unexpectedly, a partner, a friend, a family member, someone whose transformation left questions that were never answered. But perhaps closure does not come from understanding every detail of their change. Perhaps closure comes from understanding the nature of change itself. People are not photographs frozen in time. They are stories still being written, living, breathing, evolving stories. And so are you. The irony is that while we spend years mourning the people who changed, we often fail to notice how much we ourselves have changed. The person you were 5 years ago no longer exists. The fears you carried, the dreams you held, the beliefs you defended, many of them have already transformed. You too are becoming someone new. Every experience is shaping you. Every heartbreak is teaching you. Every victory is refining you. Every loss is rewriting a chapter of your identity. And one day, someone from your past may look at you and say, "You've changed." They'll say it with confusion, maybe even disappointment, because they remember who you used to be. But they don't know the battles you fought since then. They don't know the nights that altered your perspective. They don't know the lessons that reshaped your soul. They only see the result, just as you only saw the result in others. And that is the final truth. People rarely change suddenly. What appears sudden is usually the moment hidden growth finally becomes visible. The moment years of internal evolution reveal themselves to the outside world. So the next time someone changes, resist the urge to immediately label it betrayal, deception, or loss. Instead, ask yourself what invisible journey brought them here. What battles did they fight in silence? What version of themselves were they becoming while nobody was watching? Because behind every unexpected transformation lies a story. And behind every story lies a human being trying to navigate the same mystery we all face, the challenge of becoming, the challenge of evolving. The challenge of discovering who we truly are. And perhaps the deepest lesson of all is this: the people who suddenly change are not reminding us that humans are unpredictable. They are reminding us that change is the most natural thing about being human. The only question is whether we have the courage to grow consciously, or whether life will change us without our permission. Maybe the person who changed wasn't the villain of your story. Maybe they were simply a traveler on a road you could no longer walk together. And maybe the reason this truth hurts so much is because deep down, you know the same thing is happening to you. You are changing too. The question is, who are you becoming when nobody is watching? If this video resonated with you, leave a comment with one word that describes how you've changed over the last few years. Sometimes a single word can reveal an entire journey.